1 minute ago, a wall of water just erased the shoreline along the entire US West Coast. Without warning, without a tsunami alert, without any chance for the people standing there to run. Waves towering 30 feet high overtopped seawalls in a single surge, swallowed parking lots whole, and dragged bystanders into frigid water before they could even scream. This isn't a tsunami. This isn't a storm surge. This is something far more unpredictable, and scientists are terrified because they can't tell you which wave will be the killer. From Sonoma County all the way to the Washington border, over 1,000 miles of coastline is under siege right now. Roads completely flooded in Big Sur. Beaches vanished beneath churning white water in Monterey. San Francisco Bay harbors transformed into death traps within hours. The National Weather Service issued life-threatening surf warnings across the entire coast, and authorities are begging people to stay away from rocks, jetties, and the water's edge entirely. But here's what makes this crisis so chilling. The warnings came with an admission no one wanted to hear. These waves are unpredictable. Between December 2024 and January 2025, the Pacific Ocean became a killing machine. Multiple people swept into the sea. Piers collapsed. Emergency rescues conducted in conditions that made veteran lifeguards question their own safety, and the waves just kept coming, hour after hour, set after set, with no pattern anyone could predict. Picture this. You're standing on the beach, 150 feet from the water's edge. You've been watching the waves for 20 minutes. They're big, sure, maybe 8 or 10 feet, but they're breaking in a predictable rhythm. The ocean looks angry, but manageable. You turn to take a photo. In that instant, a wave 3 times larger than anything you've seen all day rises from the surf zone. No warning, no building swell. It just appears, a wall of white water racing up the beach at highway speed. You have maybe 3 seconds to react. Most people freeze. By the time your brain registers the danger, the wave is already on you. The water doesn't just knock you down. It picks you up, spins you like a rag doll, and drags you back toward the ocean as it recedes. Your clothes fill with sand and gravel, weighing you down like liquid cement. The cold Pacific water, barely above 50 degrees, starts shutting down your muscles within seconds. You can't swim. You can't scream. You can't even orient yourself to know which way is up. This is a sneaker wave, and it kills more people along the West Coast than all other weather hazards combined. The National Weather Service has confirmed that in Oregon alone, 21 deaths were attributed to sneaker waves between 1990 and early 2021. Most occurred between October and April, though these waves can strike at any time of year. California, Oregon, Washington. The toll is the same. Year after year, people underestimate the ocean. Year after year, the ocean wins. But here's what has scientists completely stunned. The danger isn't just the height of these waves. A 15-foot wave breaking in a predictable pattern is survivable if you're prepared. A 10-foot sneaker wave arriving without warning is not. The physics behind this nightmare begins thousands of miles away, in the heart of the North Pacific. And what's happening out there right now is rewriting everything meteorologists thought they knew about ocean waves. Long-period swells are fundamentally different from the waves most people picture when they think of the ocean. Typical wind waves, the kind you see on a normal day at the beach, have periods of 5 to 8 seconds between crests. They're generated by local winds. They break relatively close to shore, and their energy dissipates quickly. Long-period swells measure 15 to 20 seconds or more between crests. That difference is everything. Wave energy is a function of both height and period. The formula is straightforward, but devastating. The longer the period, the exponentially more energy each wave carries. When a long-period swell hits shallow coastal water, all that accumulated energy releases in a single violent surge. The wave doesn't just break, it explodes. NOAA research has confirmed that long-period swells can travel farther inland than shorter waves of the same height. The momentum carries water well beyond the normal surf zone, flooding areas that by every conventional measure should be completely safe. This is why people standing 150 feet from the water's edge still get caught. The wave's reach extends far beyond what the eye expects, beyond what experience teaches, beyond what common sense predicts. During the December 2024 crisis, offshore buoys recorded wave periods up to 22 seconds. Some individual waves measured 30 seconds between crests. That's not a wave. That's a moving wall of energy that's been building momentum across 5,000 miles of open ocean. Here's where it gets even more terrifying. These waves don't announce themselves. Sneaker waves earned their name for a reason. They strike without obvious warning, often appearing as part of a normal wave set until the exact moment they break. Forecasters at the National Weather Service can tell you when conditions favor sneaker waves. They can predict the general arrival of dangerous swell trains. They can issue warnings based on offshore storm activity and buoy readings. But they cannot tell you which specific wave in a set will be the sneaker wave. They cannot predict the exact moment when the ocean will surge 100 feet up a beach that looks perfectly safe. The unpredictability is absolute. In December 2024, Ryan Chen stood in a parking lot in Pacifica, California, watching waves slam into the municipal pier. He'd come to photograph the storm, just like dozens of others gathered along the coast. The spray from the waves was reaching the roadway 30 feet above the beach. Impressive, dramatic, but he felt safe. He was nowhere near the water. Then, a wave larger than anything he'd seen all morning rose from the surf zone. It hit the seawall with a sound Chen later described as a building collapsing. Water surged over the barrier and swept across the parking lot in a sheet of white foam. Chen ran. The wave caught 3 people who'd been standing near the railing, taking photos just like him. 2 scrambled to safety, soaked and terrified, but alive. The 3rd went down, pulled under by the receding water. Chen watched helplessly as the man disappeared into the churning surge. It happened in seconds, Chen said later. One moment they were taking pictures. The next, the wave was on top of them. There was no time to shout a warning, no time to react, just water. And then he was gone. Lifeguards pulled the man from the water minutes later. He survived, but barely. Hypothermia had already set in. His lungs were full of seawater. The rescuers said another 60 seconds, and they'd have been recovering a body instead of saving a life. This scene repeated itself up and down the coast. In Santa Cruz, a 150-foot section of the municipal wharf collapsed when waves undermined its supports. 3 construction workers fell into the water as the structure gave way beneath them. Emergency crews conducted a frantic rescue in conditions that put the rescuers themselves at severe risk. All 3 workers survived. The wharf remained closed indefinitely, its skeleton jutting into the surf like broken teeth. Highway 1 in Big Sur flooded in multiple locations. Emergency crews worked around the clock, sandbagging low-lying areas, but the waves kept coming. Every high tide brought a fresh assault. Beach erosion accelerated at rates that stunned coastal engineers. Dunes that had stood for decades collapsed overnight, their sand washed away in hours. Harbors suspended all small craft operations. Waves broke over jetties, snapping mooring lines and forcing entire fishing fleets to stay in port. In Monterey, commercial fishermen watched their season evaporate as day after day of life-threatening surf made it impossible to launch boats. The economic toll mounted into the millions. The human toll was worse. Multiple rescues occurred daily. People caught by rip currents, people knocked off jetties, people who thought they understood the ocean and learned too late that they didn't. So where do these monster waves come from? The answer begins thousands of miles out at sea, in the storm factories of the North Pacific. When meteorologists talk about fetch, they mean the uninterrupted distance over which wind blows across open water. In the North Pacific, fetch can extend for thousands of miles. When a massive they don't lose energy, they concentrate it. The wave height may decrease slightly as the energy spreads over a larger area, but the period remains long, and long period means power. When these swells finally reach shallow coastal water, everything changes in an instant. The waves slow down, they steepen. The seafloor drags on the bottom of the wave, forcing all that horizontal energy to release vertically. Wave heights can increase by 1.5 times or more in the final approach to shore. A 15-foot swell in deep water becomes a 25-foot monster as it breaks. This is when the wave transforms from a deep water swell into the breaking wall of water that reshapes coastlines and ends lives. During December 2024, one particular storm system, nicknamed Eddy by researchers, generated average significant wave heights above 62 feet in its core. That's the average. Individual waves within that field likely reached close to 115 feet, roughly the height of an 11-story building, rising straight out of the ocean. Eddy's swells traveled almost 15,000 miles, crossing the Drake Passage and arriving in the tropical Atlantic weeks after the storm itself had dissipated. But the danger to the West Coast came from storms much closer, spinning in the Gulf of Alaska and the central North Pacific. These systems develop when cold polar air collides with warm subtropical moisture. The temperature gradient creates powerful winds that can span over 1,000 miles. The jet stream dips south into the Pacific, sustaining storm strength for days, sometimes over a week. The storms spin counterclockwise, sending swell and rain directly toward California, Oregon, and Washington. Here's what makes this even more dangerous. The storms don't need to make landfall to kill. Their energy travels ahead of them, carried by swells that arrive days after the storm itself has moved on or weakened. You can have clear skies, light winds, and perfect beach weather, while 30-foot waves generated by a storm 2,000 miles away hammer the coast. Atmospheric rivers add another catastrophic layer to this system. These narrow bands of concentrated moisture stretch thousands of miles from the tropical Pacific, often originating near Hawaii. The jet stream dips south into tropical waters, then carries warm, moist air north and east across the ocean. This phenomenon, commonly called the Pineapple Express, is more than just a rain event. It feeds energy into Pacific storms and extends their lifespan dramatically. Atmospheric rivers transport more water vapor than the Amazon River carries in liquid form. When they make landfall, they release this moisture as torrential rain or heavy snow over relatively short periods. Rivers rise to major flood stage within hours. But the atmospheric rivers also sustain offshore storms, allowing them to churn up massive swells for days longer than they otherwise would. A persistent high-pressure ridge off the coast acts as a blocking pattern, preventing storms from moving inland quickly. This keeps the storms spinning offshore, generating wave after wave after wave. The energy builds in the ocean, and the resulting swells arrive at the coast with extreme, sustained force. Scientists at the European Space Agency recently captured the most detailed images ever recorded of these traveling swells. Using the SWOT satellite mission, researchers identified individual long-period waves more than 1,600 feet from crest to crest, far from any buoy or coastline. During Storm Eddy's peak, scientists measured wave periods up to 30 seconds. That's 3 to 4 times longer than typical wind seas. That extended period is critical because each wave carries vastly more energy and can feel the seabed in much deeper water, increasing its potential to devastate the coast when it finally shoals and breaks. The monitoring system that's supposed to keep people safe is sophisticated but has severe limitations. Offshore buoys operated by the National Data Buoy Center provide the primary warning system. These buoys measure wave height, direction, and period in real time, recording significant wave height defined as the average of the highest 1/3 of all waves during a 20-minute sampling period. When buoys record periods of 18 to 20 seconds, combined with heights of 20 feet or more, forecasters know dangerous conditions are imminent. Coastal radar systems track wave approach in real time. Satellite observations complement buoy data. The National Weather Service integrates all of this into forecasting models that predict when and where the largest waves will arrive. But prediction has hard limits. Forecasters can identify conditions that favor sneaker waves. They can issue warnings. They can beg people to stay away from the ocean. But they cannot predict which wave will be the killer. They cannot tell beachgoers when the next surge will come. The best they can do is paint the entire coast red with warnings and hope people listen. Most don't. Social media during the December 2024 crisis filled with footage of massive waves and rumors that a tsunami was approaching. The National Weather Service moved quickly to clarify the difference. Tsunamis are caused by underwater earthquakes or massive submarine landslides that displace enormous volumes of water. The resulting waves travel across entire ocean basins at speeds exceeding 500 miles per hour. When they reach shallow water near coastlines, they can rise to devastating heights. But storms, no matter how violent, cannot directly cause tsunamis. The Pacific Tsunami Warning Center confirmed repeatedly that there was no tsunami warning in effect. The dangerous waves pounding the west coast were storm swells, generated by atmospheric conditions and fetch, not by seismic activity. The confusion is understandable. When a 30-foot wave breaks over a seawall, floods streets, and sweeps people away, it feels like a tsunami. The destruction looks the same. The terror is identical, but the physics are completely different, and so is the warning system. Winter storms in the Pacific are nothing new. Sneaker waves have killed people along the west coast for as long as written records exist. Every year, the same warnings go out. Every year, authorities beg people to respect the ocean. And every year, people die because they underestimated the danger. Familiarity breeds complacency. Residents and visitors alike assume they understand the ocean because they've seen it before. They watch smaller waves for 15 or 20 minutes and decide it's safe to get closer. They want the perfect photo, the dramatic shot of spray and fury. Then the sneaker wave arrives and it's too late. Here's what's keeping coastal scientists awake at night. The conditions that produce these monster waves are intensifying. Warmer ocean temperatures feed deeper low-pressure systems. Altered wind patterns create longer fetch, and more efficient energy transfer from air to water. The jet stream is shifting, creating blocking patterns that keep storms offshore longer. Climate models predict that extreme weather events will not just continue, but will intensify. For coastal communities, the implications are stark. The waves that once came every few years now arrive every few months. Infrastructure designed for historical conditions is failing. Seawalls built decades ago cannot withstand the forces now being applied to them. Evacuation routes flood before people can use them. Emergency response systems strain under repeated, relentless impacts. NOAA's continuous monitoring network provides unprecedented visibility into ocean conditions. Forecasting has improved dramatically over the past 2 decades. Scientists can now track individual storm systems across the entire Pacific Basin. They can measure wave periods and heights with remarkable precision. They can model swell propagation and predict arrival times within hours. Yet for all the technology, for all the scientific understanding, one brutal truth remains. The ocean is stronger. The monster waves currently slamming the west coast will eventually subside. The storms will move on. The swells will fade. Beaches will reopen. Life will return to normal. But the conditions that created this crisis are not going away. They are getting worse. The next monster storm is already forming somewhere in the North Pacific. The next atmospheric river is gathering moisture over tropical waters right now. The next sneaker wave is building in a swell train that hasn't yet reached the coast. Scientists know more about these waves than ever before. They can measure them, track them, and predict their general arrival with impressive accuracy. But they cannot stop them. They cannot guarantee your safety, even 100 feet from the water's edge. They cannot tell you which wave will be the one that surges up the beach while you're standing there, phone in hand, trying to capture the perfect shot. All they can do is warn and hope you're listening. In an era of intensifying weather and rising seas, coastal risk is no longer a distant threat. It's here, it's now, and it's growing. Respect for the ocean is no longer optional. It is survival. Stay informed through official channels. Monitor NOAA forecasts and National Weather Service bulletins religiously. When authorities issue warnings, listen. When they tell you to stay back from the shoreline, stay back farther than you think is necessary. The ocean's power is absolute and indifferent. It doesn't care about your experience, your confidence, or your plans. The question is not whether the next monster wave will come. The question is whether you'll be standing in its path when it arrives.